Now, as the name of the video implies, this is the fifth part of a story, so if you haven't seen the first several parts yet, I'd highly recommend checking them out first, or this likely won't make any sense to you. Links to all previous episodes will be in the description below. And now, without further ado, let's get back to the story. We again find ourselves on the same lush blue and green world we've been to before, but this time we're inside the small hut and see the girl sleeping soundly, while the boy, who seems to be several years older than the last time we saw him, and is now perhaps in his early 20s, sits at her side holding her hand looking concerned. The boy then says to the master, who sits nearby, wearing his mask as always, "Certainly there's something we can do." The master replies, "I know not what ails her, and none of my medicines have had any effect against this strange illness." The boy's eyes narrow on him just a bit, and he says, "That's not what I'm talking about, and you know it." The master is silent for some time, and then finally says, "It is not our place to try and use the essence of life to change what is meant to be." "Meant to be?" the boy echoes. "She had a life elsewhere once. She never asked for any of this. The only reason she's here now, the only reason she's dying, is because she can feel the essence of life and was brought here. And you were supposed to teach her, and maybe if you had done that, none of this would be happening right now." The master sighs softly and then says, "I cannot teach those who are unwilling to learn." The boy frowns and says with a helpless shrug, "What's the point of learning any of this if we don't do anything with it? What's the good of having power if you don't use it?" The master tilts his head a bit and says, "And what, my apprentice, do you think we should do with this power, "I'd save her life," the boy snaps back. The master nods his head a bit as if he understands and even sympathizes. He then says, "As would I, if it did not come with a price." The boy's eyes narrow on him a bit again, and he says, "What price?" The master replies, "The essence of life has an innate will. Certainly you hear it when all else in your mind is silent." Rather reluctantly, the boy nods his head. The master then continues, "Opposing this will, changing what is meant to be, will not only corrupt the essence, it will corrupt oneself, and in the darkness they shall become one and the same." For a moment, the boy just looks confused. Then he starts to look angry and says, "All I want to know is if I can save her. I don't care about the price." The master nods as if again sympathizing with the boy and says, "And would you be willing to trade your life for hers?" The boy nods and replies instantly, "I would. I have no life without her." Again, the master nods as if he understands and sympathizes. He then says, "And would you trade the life of another, of a stranger, for hers?" It looks as if the boy is just going to blindly answer back yes, till he realizes what the master just asked him. His response dies on his lips, and the master then says, "And that is the problem with trying to control the essence of life. One never knows the price, nor are they guaranteed the outcome they desire." The boy looks down at the sleeping girl and then shuts his eyes and squeezes her hand and says, "I don't care about any risks. I just want to see that she gets better. I'll do whatever I have to." Once more, the master nods as if he can sympathize. He then says, "So be it then. Heal her if you wish." The boy's eyes snap open, and for the briefest of moments, there is a look of absolute joy there. But it quickly fades when it dawns on him exactly what the master has said. "Me? Heal her? I don't know how to do that." "And you assume I do?" the master replies. The boy's eyes narrow on him again, and he says, "You know the ways of the essence far better than I do." The master gives a modest shrug. "Yes, true, but that does not mean I understand it completely, or even mostly, or even at all." The boy then snaps back. "So you're just going to let her die then, is that it?" The master replies, "Let her die? No. I will continue to search for a medicine that may cure whatever ails her, but that is all I can do." The boy then drops the hand of the girl and springs to his feet. Angrily looking down upon the master, he says, "No, it isn't. You know how to heal her, and you refuse. I know it." Without another word, he runs from the hut and into the forest. And for some time, we follow him as he runs deeper and deeper into the thick woods, tears of anger and frustration streaming down his face. Suddenly, though, he skids to a quick halt when he comes face to face with a large, furry white creature, the same kind we've seen him run into before, but this one is much larger and looks even angrier. The creature then rears back and lets out a mighty roar as the boy takes a moment to try and calm himself before reaching out to it, no doubt in an effort to connect with it and calm the beast, to let it know he means no harm. but the boy fails to make the connection, and the creature swipes a massive clawed paw right at him, an attack the boy manages to dodge by just a fraction of an inch by diving out of the way. But the creature moves faster than would seem possible out of something so big and hulking, and instantly it's upon the boy once more, towering over him and looking even more furious than it did just moments ago. And as it raises its huge paw into the air again for another attack, the boy tries to scramble to his feet to get away, but he's too slow, too overcome with fear, and as the creature begins to swing, all the boy can do is shut his eyes and hope for the best. But the attack never lands. Instead, everything goes silent, and after a few seconds, the boy opens his eyes and sees that the creature now stands above him with a blank expression upon its furry white face. The boy lets out a sigh of relief and gives a faint smile as he says, "Thank you, master." But the male voice that responds says, "No, my young friend, I am not your master, but if you need a teacher, I could show you the ways of the Force." The boy now sees that it indeed wasn't his master that saved him from the creature, but instead is a tall, middle-aged man with long, dark, unkempt hair, wearing simple brownish-gray robes, and this man holds out a hand to the once angry creature that now stands there silent and motionless, as if like a droid waiting for commands. The boy now says, Who are you? How do you even get here?" The man shrugs. "I got here the same way you did." He glances off in the direction of the ocean and continues, "They brought me here a long time ago, as they bring all here that they encounter who are strong with the Force." The boy shakes his head, and it seems like he has a million questions he wants to ask, and he stutters to get even one out, and finally says, "The Force? What exactly is the Force? What are you talking about?" The man gives a casual shrug. "What you think of as the essence of life, I call the Force." The boy narrows his eyes a bit and asks why he calls it that, and the man responds, "Because we can either be forced to follow its will, or force it to follow our own. Either way, all it truly is power. Raw power that controls everything." The boy's eyes then shift to the creature, and he says, You're controlling him, aren't you? Not just connecting with him, but controlling him. How?" The man gives a slight, humble shrug and says, "The Force gives me the ability to dominate and control the minds of lesser creatures and beings." The boy shakes his head and begins to say, "But Master said that..." The strange man cuts him off and says, "Your master has lied to you about a great many things." At first the boy looks like he wants to argue, but in the end he just says, Why? Why would he do that? What has he lied about?" The man responds, "He lies because he fears what you could become if you knew the truth, if you let your own ambitions rule you. That's why you were brought here in the first place, so you could be controlled." The boy shakes his head and says, I don't believe you. Master doesn't believe in controlling anything." But the man replies, "That's what he wants you to believe. You see, my young friend, choice and free will are illusions. The Force already has a destiny for us all, and only those with true power can break free of this predetermined fate and make things the way they desire." The man walks forward a few steps and stops directly in front of the boy. He lays a friendly hand upon his shoulder and says, "There are only two choices, my young friend. You can either let the Force control you, or you can control it. And with control comes the ability to dictate everything, including life and death." The man then makes a slight motion with his head towards the creature that had been standing there silently the whole time, and now the furry white beast raises a massive clawed paw and rakes it across its own throat before crumbling to the ground in a bloody mess. The boy, an absolutely horrified expression upon his face, quickly begins to backpedal away from both the creature and the man who just forced it to kill itself. And as he's backing away, the boy sputters out, How'd you make it do that? Who are you? What are you?" The man replies, "My name is Ren, and I can teach you a great many things, and I can show you how to become what you were meant to be." We then switch scenes and find ourselves back on the swampy world, where we're underground in an apparent dark side cave, where Mara Jade is face to face with a masked entity of some kind that has just identified itself as Ren, and told her that she is not the one he seeks, but that she will bring them to him. Mara now responds, "And why should I do that for you, assuming I'd even have any idea who you're talking about?" Ren replies, "Those who serve me are rewarded. Those who oppose me will be destroyed." Mara gives a bit of a smirk and replies, So says the one who's been trapped on this world for how long exactly? Because I've never heard of any Sith named Ren before, and something tells me all you are is a remnant brought forth by the power of this place, a fading dark side echo of some long since dead and forgotten Sith. In less than a blink of an eye then, Ren quickly moves forward like a blur and extends his arms out and places a pale, ghastly hand on Mara's forehead. Instantly then, Mara lets out a scream of excruciating pain. Ren then says, "Do I feel like a fading remnant of the dark side to you?" Mara manages to shake her head, and she continues to scream out in pain. He then says, "Do I feel like a mere Sith?" Again, Mara manages to shake her head. "What has felt like an eternity, I have called out to any and all who are strong enough with the dark side to possibly free me, promising them power beyond reason and imagination if they could succeed, but none have ever been able to reach this place until you." Ren removes his hand from her forehead, and Mara falls to her knees, looking completely drained and exhausted. He then says, "And though you lack the power to free me, in your mind I see that you are wise and cunning, and most importantly, ambitious. Perhaps you will be just clever and strong enough to bring to me the one I seek, and when you do, you shall be rewarded." Mara now looks up and asks, Who is it you seek? Name them, and I will not rest until they are brought before you. All I ask is that you show me how to tame the Force as you have." The figure nods in an approving manner and says, "Yes, you have seen true power now, and you are wise to yield to it, wise to now serve me faithfully, for all who do are destined to become more powerful than they can possibly imagine." With tears streaming down her face, tears that seem to be born of joy and not the pain she just endured, Mara asks as she reaches out and takes hold of Ren's hand with her own, "Name them, my lord. Name the one you seek." Ren lets out something like a frustrated sigh and says, "The chosen one failed to heed my call, failed to embrace his true purpose, and his son and daughter have been lost to the light. But there is a child, a last hope, and it is him you will bring before me. It is he who shall bring a true balance to the Force and release me." We then switch scenes and find ourselves focused in on the face of young Ben Solo as he sits on a sofa in his apartment and watches a discussion that is taking place between his mother Leia and his uncle Luke. A discussion that is happening too far away from him to actually hear, but one we jump into the middle of, and we hear Leia say, "He's decided then. He wants to become a Jedi like his uncle." Those were his exact words. Luke nods his head a bit and tries to look like he's pleased to hear that, but Leia can clearly tell or sense his apprehension and asks, "What is it? If you don't think..." But Luke cuts her off with a reassuring look and says, "It's not that I don't think he should be trained, Leia. It's just that..." Luke falls silent and Leia urges him to tell her what it is. And finally Luke responds, "I'm afraid I am the only reason he wants to be a Jedi, that he thinks someday he'll be a hero like me." Leia gives Luke a playful grin and says, "Seems like someone has a pretty high opinion of themselves." Luke returns the smile and says, "You know what I mean, Leia." She nods her head to that, and her face gets serious once more as she says, "I know, Luke. I'm just afraid that Ben's going to end up like our father." But Luke vehemently shakes his head and says, "Our father was a good man, whose mind was twisted and corrupted by a monster. Palpatine created Vader, and it was our father that defeated them both in the end." Leia nods to that and looks reassured for a moment, but only a moment before she says, "There's something you sense about him, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. There's something about Ben that truly worries you. I can just tell." Luke looks away for a moment, as if trying to think of the right thing to say. Finally he says, "What do you sense from him?" Leia quickly replies, "A shadow mostly, but you told me the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows, that I have nothing to worry about." Luke nods and then further asks, "What else do you sense from him?" For a moment, Leia, as nonchalantly as she can, looks and focuses on Ben, who still sits quietly in the next room. After some time, she finally says, "Not much, to be honest. You taught me how to reach out with my feelings, but it's almost like he closes himself off to me. But there are times I can feel him reaching out to me." Luke again falls silent, and Leia urges, "Tell me, Luke, what is it?" Luke gives a bit of a frown and says, "I can't sense him, not at all. It's like he's not even there, like he's not a part of the Force, like he's closed himself off to it, but at the same time, it's clear he hasn't, since he wields the Force." Leia blinks in confusion a few times and asks, Can one truly close themselves off from the Force? Wouldn't they just die? Luke gives a bit of a shrug as if to say he doesn't know the answer. He then says, Palpatine was able to hide his power. That's how the Jedi never discovered him. But Palpatine was a master of manipulation who had years to hone his abilities, while Ben is an untrained boy. Leia then asks, what's it all mean? Luke replies, Ahsoka believes it may mean he has more raw power than any Force user ever has before, that, like our father and like ourselves, he is some type of vergence in the Force, something that exists to fulfill a purpose, and the longer that purpose goes unfulfilled, the more powerful the next who comes about to carry it out becomes. Luke sighs, and after briefly glancing at Ben, he says as he looks into Leia's eyes, it means if I fail him, who knows what he could become. And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I've got for this time, and now I'd like to take a moment to thank all the names you see on your screen who have been contributing their art throughout this series, before now turning it over to all of you to tell me what you thought of this episode and what you think might happen next. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.